Emotions after brain injury can be one of the hardest things to understand, especially as a survivor, because it's so hard to know what's going on in your own head. It's like, is this coming from the actual brain injury where you might have some frontal lobe or executive functioning decision-making struggles? Is this coming from the physical response? Is it coming from me being tired? Or do I actually feel upset? And so emotions after brain injury can come in a wide range, and it can often feel like extremes. It can go from being so overwhelmed and overstimulated and having outbursts of anger or sadness that you can't control, all the way to the range of feeling nothing, feeling blank. There's something called flat affect that can happen after a brain injury, which I had the first couple years, that you basically don't show emotion or have emotional responses. Like, my face was really blank. My mom said I didn't smile spontaneously at all until like 2 years after my first brain injury. And it's a very odd place to be as a survivor, because let's dive into that feeling blank for now. And then we'll talk more about outbursts. We'll talk more about different types of emotional ranges when it comes to brain injury. And I just hope that this helps you to maybe think, oh, I've felt that way. Or if you're a caregiver, think, oh, I've seen that in my survivor. And I hope this discussion helps you to kind of just take this a little bit further and know that you're not alone. Because the thing about emotions is they affect our relationships. So your emotional responses affect your friendships. They affect your family relationships. They also affect your identity and the way that you view yourself. The way that you handle your emotions can have a lot to do with somebody's personality. Like, if you say like, oh, that person's like really chill, they're like type B, like, they are go with the flow, you might think that's because they aren't as emotionally high strung. Whereas you might say, these are just in general terms, somebody who is really emotional and high strung or type A or stressed out, you view somebody's personality oftentimes based on their emotional responses. And the tricky thing is, after brain injury, the way that you respond isn't always your personality. So maybe this is a whole other conversation for another podcast, but I act a lot more introverted than I actually maybe am, just because I get overwhelmed in crowds and I have a hard time in social situations and I don't remember things always. So I just kind of am a little more reserved than maybe I was or would be if I wasn't having brain injury symptoms. And so when it comes to emotions, let's go back to that idea of feeling blank. So somebody with a brain injury could have trouble feeling anything at all. Like, they could logically know they're supposed to feel a certain way in a certain situation, but they don't. And they don't feel anything. Or maybe they're unable to cognitively comprehend what's going on, and so they just don't feel. I know that earlier on in my brain injury journey, I had this a lot where something would happen. It maybe like a tragedy in the community or on the news or in our family, or something bad would happen like circumstantially, and I wouldn't cry. I just wouldn't. I felt bad and I cared, but I kept feeling like, is there something wrong with me? Why can't I express this? Like, I do care. I really do. But like, other people are crying and I'm just like, okay, and I wouldn't cry watching sad movies or anything. I just was like, I didn't feel a lot. So it was kind of hard to express because I didn't even know how I felt. And that's another side of it. Brain injury survivors may also not know how to express how they're feeling. So, it could either go from feeling basically nothing at all and not knowing how to express that because you're not feeling, you feel blank. You just don't feel anything. Or you could be feeling a lot of things, like feeling a ton, and you are not able to express how you feel. So you could be feeling sad, or you could be feeling angry, or you could be feeling upset, or you could be sad, or I already said sad, or you could be really happy, but you can't put it into words. And so you can't express it. And so it's hard to relate to other people because you're not really able to say it out loud. Or you're not crying even though you're sad. You're just not expressing how you feel. And in the same person, you could have all of these different responses on different days at different times. You could have it at different stages in your recovery. You could have different types of emotional responses, or it could be depending on the day and how you're feeling. That's one of the hard things about brain injury is the unpredictability of how you're going to feel each day. So it could also be like one brain injury survivor could have feeling blank or feeling nothing as their default, and another one could have just feel a whole lot inside, but they can't verbalize it and they can't express it. And both of those things leads to frustration, and it can also lead to rifts in relationships because you don't have that shared emotional feeling with the people around you. And so that can cause more isolation too. Now let's talk about the other extreme, outbursts. I can say without a doubt that emotional outbursts is probably something that most brain injury people experience, because if you're too tired or overstimulated, or there's too much going on, or you simply have trouble with your frontal lobe, you can't express it in a way that is logical always. I don't know if I want to say logical, but I might logically know that I shouldn't really be that upset about something, but I'm uncontrollably crying. So it's like I'm outbursts and like I'm sobbing, or I could get really angry. I think this is something a lot of people experience, are anger outbursts and irritation and, just temper tantrums, having a short fuse, being unable to handle things. And this could come from being unable to handle changes in routine, changes in life in general, changes throughout your day. It could be really hard when your schedule gets knocked off. If you're tired and didn't sleep well, if you woke up with a headache, if your brain is just overloaded by too much sensory information, I know I will often get very irritated if I'm out in public and I'm in a crowded environment. That can cause irritation. And so sometimes you will outburst and you will yell at people and snap at them. And I know for me, that creates such dissonance inside of myself because generally, I think of myself as a kind person. I love the people around me and I love my family. But if I'm so overwhelmed, I find myself yelling at them. And I don't want to do that. But I can't control the anger. And that has been something that I've worked on through the years. And so one strategy I can share is I've had to start to learn when I get overwhelmed and recognize how my body feels. So sometimes my heart will beat faster. I'll start to feel a headache. I'll feel off, or my words will start to slur, and I know I'm overwhelmed. And I will let the people around me know, hey, my brain is tired right now. And so I'm getting really irritated. And so that gives them a little bit of a heads up so that I'm less likely to snap at them. Or, apologizing in advance. Like if it's like the middle of the day and you're like, I'm really done for the day. I'm sorry if I can't control my emotions the rest of the day, just communicating that. But it takes time because for a while, I didn't even know how to express that. I didn't even know when I was getting upset or when I was getting tired until it was too late, until I'd already had outbursts. And earlier on in the brain injury journey, I would throw temper tantrums like a toddler, but with the strength of a teenager. So I got the door taken off of my room. My parents took off the door because I would slam it all the time. I would punch the walls. I could not control my anger. And that comes from so many things. You could feel that life change of having the brain injury, not feeling like yourself, feeling like a stranger in your own head, feeling like you're disappointing people around you, plus not having the cognitive ability of being able to have the executive functioning to understand what's going on and how you're feeling. It's just like a recipe for outbursts. So if you're listening to this and you have had outbursts yourself, I want you to know it is common with brain injury. Do not blame yourself. It is okay. It's going to happen. Your brain's injured. If you expect yourself to never have emotional outbursts after you have a brain injury, that'd be like expecting to, after you sprain your knee, never have pain while you're walking. Like, that's part of the brain. Your brain controls your emotional responses. And so that part's injured and it's going to be harder to deal with. Another thing could be inappropriate responses. So socially inappropriate responses such as laughing when it's not appropriate or crying when it's not the right environment to cry, talking, interrupting people, getting like emotionally irritated. This could, again, be a whole other conversation too about social cues. After a brain injury, it's just harder to pick up on social cues. It's harder to read the room, so to say. If you're talking to someone, it's a lot harder to understand subtext. I know for me, like, I'm a very, very direct person, and this has come as a result of coping from my brain injury. But I've had to learn over the years that if somebody says something, they might not always mean exactly what they say. There could be a tone going on. Like, I would hear the words and not always understand the tone. So I can't think of a good example right now, but if somebody says something like, oh, you should go do that, and they're being sarcastic, I wouldn't know they're being sarcastic, or I wouldn't know that they're saying it in a irritated way. Like, I might just take the words at face value. And so it's taken time for me to kind of learn how to pick up on sarcasm again. It took probably like over 10 years for that for me, but I kept having more brain injuries. So it was a long recovery process with post-concussive syndrome. And so, yeah, but social cues, socially inappropriate emotional responses, it's hard. And I feel like as a brain injury survivor, I still have trouble with always expressing how I feel, and I still have trouble always knowing how I feel. Over the years, it's gotten less, I've had less and less like outbursts, but I've had more and more trouble with the subtle things. So in friendships and in dating relationships and in close family relationships, it's hard to always know how I feel about a situation. It's hard to always know how to respond in situations when emotions are involved, especially like if there's conflict with somebody, like a friend that you really care about. If there's conflict, or if there is a high-strung situation, or if there's tension, I don't always know how to navigate that. And sometimes I would end up just crying and crying and crying if I have a conflict with someone, if I felt like they misunderstood me. And then they're like, oh, she's just trying to get pity. But in reality, I just can't control my emotion. So I've lost friendships over that. I say friendships loosely because anybody who's going to leave me over that, not be my friend, I don't know how good of a friend they were in the first place. But there's so many nuances when it comes to this emotion piece as a brain injury survivor that it's hard to express and hard to explain because it's inside. It's inside your heart. I mentioned earlier, like dating relationships. So like, I'm pretty private about my dating experiences, but I will share years ago, I was in an abusive relationship and I knew that I felt a little bit off, but I thought it was me. I thought I was a problem. I had a hard time understanding what was wrong, and he would tell me how I felt. So he would say like that I felt a certain way about a situation. I'd be like, oh, maybe I do, because I didn't really know how to express how I felt. And so like when early on he would love bomb me. And so he'd be like, you know, and I was like, do I love him? And like, I never loved him, but I thought that I did because he was telling me that he loved me and that he, you know, that I loved him. So I thought I did, but now I know that wasn't love at all. I actually wrote a song about that. It's on my album called Declaration. It's called That's Not Love. And it's based on the scripture in 1 Corinthians 13. That's like, you know, what love is, the definition of love, patient and kind, and what love isn't, abusive, controlling, stuff like that. And so I had to work through the emotion through writing it in a song. And so creative outlets are a really good way as a brain injury survivor to learn your emotions better. Songwriting has helped me tremendously learning how to express my emotions, because I will often not know how I feel until I write a song about it. Journaling is also excellent. I will journal my prayers. It helps to see it on paper. And when I'm actually writing it, I'm able to think, do I feel like that? And I'm able to actually have that self-examination. I also highly recommend professional therapy, counseling, a neuropsychologist, maybe one that specializes in brain injury to help you work through some of this. If you've been through other traumatic situations, such as abusive relationship, I would highly suggest a trauma therapist, somebody who specializes in trauma. If you've had, I believe everyone should be in therapy. We all could use it. Caregivers, survivors, human beings alike. It really is wonderful to dig deeper into your mental health, and it helps you to understand. So I highly recommend professional help when it comes to learning your emotions. But I just hope that this episode has been able to help you guys in just knowing, like, if it does one thing, to know, hey, if you have weird emotional responses that you don't feel like are normal, and there's this cognitive dissonance between how I actually feel and how I'm reacting. You know, I'm not really that upset about this, but I'm yelling at them about it. But I'm not upset, but I'm yelling. Or I'm not that upset, but I'm crying. Or I feel so much inside of me, but I can't say it and I can't express it. You know, if you felt any of those ways, I just want you to know you're not alone and there's hope. Hope survives always. So thanks for listening. If there are any ways that you can relate to this, please comment on our social media at Hope After Head Injury on Instagram or Facebook. You can also join our Facebook support group at facebook.com/groups/Hope After Head Injury. You can post in there. I'm in there, as well as a team of moderators and an amazing community of hope that can just talk with you about this. My email inbox is also always open, Cristabelle at hopeafterheadinjury.com. I'd love to hear from you. Through your darkest night, hope survives.